Welcome in to Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs. A lot of rumors flying around your Houston Texans. I'm going to break them all down on today's show. Could the Texans be trading for Saints wide receiver Chirs Olave? Is Tytus Howard not starting on this offensive line? And could the Texans make another free agency signing now on the defensive side with signing one of the top linebackers remaining? We'll break all these down on today's show. But before we get started, had a little friendly wager with my bosses. They were looking at the latest analytics on my channel, and they said, hey, none of your past 20 videos have gotten past 2,000 likes. So they said, prove me wrong, and I said, hold my beer. Let's get 2,000 likes on this video. My boss said, no way it happens. Let's prove them wrong. If you love the Houston Texans and you want to show my boss that Texans fans represent, they show out, go down and hit that thumbs up icon like today's video. On today's show, the latest Texans news and rumors, and giving my opinion on how likely they are to happen for your Houston Texans. And if this is your first time watching the program, well, first of all, thank you for tuning in to today's show. But also a little quick reminder of whenever we use our Toro heads meter, this is how I kind of grade what rumors are likely, less likely, and just straight up BS. If I give it 0 heads or fake news, no way it's happening. 1 head, a small shred of truth. If I'm giving it 2 Toro heads, think of it like a 50-50 chance of that happening. 3 Toro heads, I'm thinking that's pretty likely. And 4 Toro heads, H-Town, hold it down. That is going down. So first, let's talk about this trade rumor. So I've been hearing a lot about it around the Chat Sports office. Our Saints host, Trace Gerard, has been telling me about it. Could the Saints be trading Chirs Olave? And could the Texans be interested? I'm going to give this 1 Toro head, just saying there's a small possibility. And, I was even talking about maybe giving it 2 Toro heads because with a guy like Nick Caserio, you never know what this team is going to do. But Chirs Olave injured last year for the New Orleans Saints and is somewhat on the not on the chopping block, but on the trade block for the Saints. He's entering the last year of his deal, and a lot of publications are talking about the Saints possibly getting off of Chirs Olave and his potential new contract because his rookie deal is coming to an end. Now, I based my trade for Chirs Olave off of a Sports Illustrated trade where they had the Patriots sending Joe Milton to the Saints. I don't think the Saints would be interested in Davis Mills. So instead, I concocted this trade right here. And I want you to go down in the comment section and let me know. Would you make this trade? The Texans get Chirs Olave and a 2025 4th-round pick from the New Orleans Saints. We are sending over a 2nd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, and John Metchie. So go down in the comment section. Give me a yes. Give me a no. Let me know. Do you think the Texans would make this trade, or would you make this trade if you were Nick Caserio? Let me know your thoughts down below, and give me a reason why or why not you would make this deal if you were the Houston Texans. If I was the one in charge of making this, calling the shots for the Houston Texans, I would go ahead and make this deal. But I'm not sure the Saints want to deal him before the draft because when I'm looking at the Saints, their roster, their draft capital at the moment, I don't know if the Saints necessarily benefit from another 2nd-round pick. And I know what you're saying, Jeremy, what team doesn't benefit from a 2nd-round pick? The Saints already have 9 selections in this year's draft, 6 of which are in the first 4 rounds. So they already have a ton of draft capital in the first 4 rounds. So adding another 2nd-round pick and getting rid of your, possible wide receiver 1 going into this next season, I don't know if the Saints necessarily want to make that happen. And, why the Saints would go ahead and keep Olave as well is, like I said, he's your wide receiver 1. He's a great receiver when he's healthy. So the Saints sending him away, at this point, I don't think his value's been any lower since he's joined the Saints in the National Football League. The Saints already have a need at wide receiver as well. Behind Chirs Olave, their next guy would be who? Rashid Shaheed. And he's a really good receiver, really good punt return man, kick return man, but he's not a wide receiver 1. And it's a questionable market for, getting a free agent wide receiver this year. And even if you draft somebody in the first round of this year's draft, there's no, sure thing of that you're going to get a guy that's nearly half as good as Chirs Olave. So those are some reasons why I don't think the Saints necessarily make this move before this NFL draft. I could definitely see them possibly shopping him during the season this year, though. And the reasons why they would want to trade Olave, I think more likely after the NFL draft throughout the regular season to a team that absolutely needs a wide receiver is, like I said, he's entering the final year of his contract. The Saints only have, they have negative cap space going into 2026. They are under the cap space, negative $6.4 million. And he, like I said, he has serious injury concerns, does Chirs Olave. So adding a guy like Chirs Olave, I don't know if that necessarily does it for this team. I don't know if it makes sense for the Saints to get rid of him, And you look at his stats over the past 3 seasons, right? In 2023, in 2022 was awesome. But you're looking at the other, Chirs Olave this past year and what he's going to do moving forward, I'm not sure that he's a fit for the New Orleans Saints and what they want to do over there in New Orleans. Next up, Tytus Howard. Is he not starting for this Texans team? Well, I'll get into that in just a moment. Before I talk about Tytus and before I talk about this offensive line, got to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app out there with over 10 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. Get started, and I'm telling you, whether it's basketball, football, baseball right around the corner, they have it all for you, and you can win real money in less than 60 seconds. Turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. That, my friends, is guaranteed. So get started today with our friends over at Prize Picks. Run your game. Tytus Howard, is he not starting? I'm going to give this one 2 Toro heads, and I'm going to say there's a chance. I'm not saying that he's for sure not starting, and I'm not saying that he's a for sure starter on this team just yet, because I think a lot of this hinges on the 2025 NFL draft and who the Texans select in round 1 and round 2. The biggest question mark, though, is whether he starts, but also where do you play him? Because Tytus Howard has bounced around everywhere on this Texans offensive line through his time in Houston. He's been left tackle. He's been right tackle. He's been left guard. He's been right guard. He's played almost every position besides the center spot for this Texans team. And whenever I'm looking at this, Texans offensive line, whenever I look around Texans Twitter at what other people have the Texans doing, I see a lot of people have different opinions on this, right? I see people saying that, he'll start over Blake Fisher at right tackle, and actually Blake Fisher won't start. He'll be behind Tytus Howard at right tackle. I have people saying, he's going to be the starter at left guard. He'll be the left guard next to Cam Robinson, and then they'll just need to work on their center and right guard. And then there's some people who are like, he's not going to start at all. I don't know if that's the case. I think they would have to go offensive line in round 1 and 2 of this year's draft to make that a thing where Tytus Howard's not starting, not one of your starting 5 on this Texans offensive line. But we look at his PFF grades from 2024. Decent grades, right? 70.1, 70.5 pass blocking grade, a 60.0 run blocking grade. And obviously, the hurries, the hits, the sacks allowed, all those numbers you'd hope to come down. 4 penalties on the year as well. But out of all the Texans starters last year, is it weird to say that Tytus Howard might have been the best starter for the Texans this past season? He was decent at right tackle. When they needed him to move over to left guard and start there, that's exactly what he did. 16 games played, 4 sacks allowed. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around Tytus Howard not playing on this Texans team. They already restructured his contract in a way where I really don't think it's possible for the Texans to even move on from Tytus Howard this offseason, whether that's a trade or in free agency. I don't think the money really makes sense in either of those instances. So where will Tytus Howard play? If I had to put my money on it right now, I think he'd play at left guard. But like I said, that's a lot depending on what the Texans do in or throughout the rest of free agency, and especially in the 2025 NFL draft. And speaking of free agency, the last story on today's program, the Texans signing a linebacker in free agency. I'm going to also give this one 2 Toro heads, and I'm going to say it's possible. It's definitely possible that the Texans could go out and add another free agent linebacker, namely Kyzir White. That's who ESPN linked to the Houston Texans, saying that Houston was a top landing spot for White. The Texans might need some help at linebacker. They actually brought in, or they're going to bring in a USC linebacker for a top 30 visit. My wonder is, could Kyzir White sign with the Texans before the NFL draft? When I'm looking at Kyzir White, pretty good with Arizona this past season. And reminder, he has that, somewhat connection to the Texans defensive coordinator, Matt Burke, who was with Arizona before he came over to Houston. This past year, though, in 17 games played, 137 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 3 PBUs, 1 interception. Not bad numbers for Kyzir White. I mean, is he the best coverage linebacker we have or that's out there? Possibly, but at the end of the day, I don't think Kyzir White, you're going to want to sign him to a big contract. He's somebody who kind of still under the radar a little bit. I mean, even after he went to the Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles, I still think Kyzir White was a little bit under the radar after leaving them in 2022. We'll see what the Texans do with this, but at the end of the day, I also think with Kyzir White and the Houston Texans, I really like White. I think he's a good rotational linebacker. But I also think he's good enough to start somewhere in this league. I think Kyzir White could find the right situation, could find the right team that he could have a chance at starting. And I don't know if that's the Houston Texans. I don't think that's a guarantee if White signs in Houston, because you have Azeez Al-Shire. Right now you still have Christian Harris. You have Henry To'o. So at most, he's going to have to battle with all 3 of those guys to get time on the field. And this past year, the Texans weren't running a lot of 3 linebacker sets. A lot of the times, they were running 4 down linemen, only 2 linebackers, and 5 DBs on the field. So that really takes linebacker out of the equation even more. And if you're somebody like Kyzir White, you're probably looking to play somewhere where you can have a ton of playing time. And I'm just not sure that's the Houston Texans. I don't think that he would want to also be a special teamer. And at this point, if the Texans were to sign another linebacker, I think they would have to help out in special teams. That's not really Kyzir's game. I think he's good. I like the fit with the Texans. I just think it's not the right time, and he could probably find somewhere else that he could go and start. I will say this. If the Texans do sign Kyzir White, if anything happens with Tytus Howard, if they do trade for Chirs Olave, we got you covered here on the channel. Don't miss a thing. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Why not hit that sub button for free Texans videos all year long?